friend, welcome to another video. For today, we are going to be looking into another urban legend that surrounds the unlucky number 13. People love to associate the number 13 with bad luck, with evil. When Friday the 13th rolls around, some people are downright terrified to the point where having a fear of that day is known as paraskevidkatiophobia. Some people say that this fear of the number 13 stems from the Bible, where in the Last Supper, Judas is the 13th guest and he's the one who betrays Jesus. In Norse mythology, it said something similar, where Loki was the 13th guest at a dinner party in Valhalla and was responsible for introducing evil into the world. But cultures like ancient Egypt actually considered 13 to be a lucky number. And it's crazy because, especially over here in Canada and the States, the vast majority of high-rise buildings don't even have a 13th floor. Like, technically there will be a 13th floor to the building, but in an elevator, for example, the buttons will go from 12 to 14. There will be no 13th floor, which I can attest to. I lived in a high-rise apartment building with 26 floors and there was no button going to the 13th floor. Margaret Murray, who considered herself to be the reigning authority on witchcraft back in the day before she was discredited, said that medieval witchcraft had covens containing 13 members. Taylor Swift considers her lucky number to be 13, and I released my first single on November 13th, Chaos I Create by Lara Pretty, available on all streaming platforms. But going back to the notion that claimed covens contained 13 members is actually where today's video stems from. In a town called Watchung, New Jersey, there's a legend where some claim that a coven of 13 witches lived in that area and created what is now called the 13 Bumps Road. This road is technically now called Johnston Drive and is just off of Route 22, a 6-mile road winding back and forth in an S shape. And when you drive along this road, you're supposed to feel a total of 13 bumps in the middle of the road. According to what I've read, this road provides quite the spooky nighttime experience for people living in this area of Union County, as it seems like pretty much everyone around there has heard of this legend and wants to see for themselves if it's actually true. The legend goes that in 1845, there was a man named David Felt who was looking to build a village in the Watchung Reservation area in order to provide a home for the local paper mill workers to live, which he called Feltville after his last name. Slowly but surely, as he began building the town, people came to live there, and things were going well for his new little village, and after 5 years, it had grown to almost 200 people. But that seemed to be its peak of fortune, because for the next 2 years, 11 children from Feltville would be captured and later found mutilated on the outskirts of town. The only logical explanation seemed to be that there was some big scary animal lingering in the surrounding forest, something that would see a small child as a snack and leave their body discarded afterward. So a bunch of hunters were sent into the woods to kill or trap any sort of carnivorous animal that may have been responsible for this. But their efforts were futile because the attacks kept occurring. And this was when people began whispering to one another or outright accusing neighbors of being the ones to kill their children, which eventually turned to people thinking demons were responsible. So of course, as you can probably guess, the next natural progression of blame went on to witches. Now, the witch trials were over in America at this point for about a century, but it's not that hard to believe that this would be where people's minds would wander to. So people's focus began shifting to that of a family of sisters who had lost their parents at a young age, with the sisters being between the ages of 10 to 26. And the thing about these sisters was that there were 13 of them. The sisters tended to their crops, and people thought it was suspicious that the girls' field grew very abundantly each year, even if the weather wasn't the greatest for crops that year. So for this reason, the townspeople decided that the sisters were witches and that these girls had been sacrificing the children from town to their pagan gods in order to have a bountiful harvest. Which, guys, please don't believe this whenever you hear something like that. Pagans, Wiccans, witches, we don't sacrifice people to the devil. This is not a thing pagans do. Anyway. Eventually, the sisters had to endure a trial where they were found guilty of their apparent crimes of witchcraft and were subsequently hanged from the trees surrounding the village. Before being hanged, however, it's been said that the sisters cast a curse upon the village, And in order to commemorate the crimes the townspeople believed these witches had committed upon the children, the bodies of the 13 sisters were buried on a local road, making the 13 bumps on the road, which is now called Johnston Drive. A few years later, when David Felt, who created the town, left to move to New York, leaving behind all the residents who had moved to the town he'd built, famine and illness moved rapidly throughout Feltville, killing many and driving the rest out. Apparently there are even a few houses from Feltville left there today, along with a small church, a cemetery, and a small mill, which people refer to as the Deserted Village, which sits in Berkeley Heights and is maintained by the county. Reportedly, Johnston Drive has been paved over again and again over the years, but according to some locals, these 13 bumps keep reappearing. The road had been dug up to pave it over, but somehow those 13 bumps, they just made an appearance. Apparently, if you want to see the ghosts of the 13 sisters, what you need to do is travel uphill on that road and count out loud all of the 13 bumps as you go uphill. Once you reach the last one, you're supposed to turn around as the 13 sisters will be standing behind your car. Though, others have said that if you instead only feel 12 bumps, then you're supposed to get out of that area fast because the witches will be chasing after you. People say that all the attempts to pave over the road and the bumps is a pointless task because the witches refuse to be forgotten. And many locals are said to still believe in the legend, though there are those that have lived in the area for their whole life and have only really started hearing about this legend about 10 years ago. And if a family of 13 was hanged under suspicion of witchcraft years and years and years after the Salem witch trials were already over, surely there would be a record of that somewhere. But I haven't been able to find any confirmation of such a trial having existed. Though more rational people believe that the reason why the bumps are there is because Johnston Drive is a very steep road, and that there used to be a school at the top of the hill back in the day that a horse and carriage would be used in order to reach the top. And the bumps were made originally to stop the carriage from rolling backwards down the hill. While others say it's more likely that just a bunch of local teens made up the legend while noticing how spooky it is to drive down that road at night when the fog rolls through. A guy from the area named James Sullivan has made a YouTube video about his experience in trying to see the 13 witches on the road, but even though he's tried it many times, he's apparently never seen the witches. But he says he has felt the 13 bumps, believing that each time that the road is paved over, those bumps will continue to reappear in the pavement. I always love knowing what you guys think about urban legends in particular, so if you have any thoughts or theories surrounding this particular urban legend on my favorite subject of witches, please be sure to leave me a comment down below and like and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!